radio, and you know that there is this sort of blurred line that attempts to tell people that what they're hearing is news, but it's really advocacy. What do you make of the fact that there is still this core of conservatives, the William F. Buckley, the Christopher Buckleys of the world, who are trying to resist it?
Well, Joe, I think there are conservatives of conscience still in the United States, whether it's folks like David French or Rick Wilson or others. But let's be honest, Sean Hannity is a propagandist. He is delivering the talking points as if drafted by the Kremlin and Putin himself. And I think it's important, Joe, to speak with great clarity now in this backdrop, because we had this weekend at the Aspen Institute, former CIA Director Brennan, former Director of National Intelligence Clapper say that the future of the government is at stake. Why is that? It's because I think that they're pointing to the fact that we have a president of the United States in Donald Trump who is at the very least guilty of treasonous behavior. We know that. That's clear. It's no longer speculation. It's fact. And that is why, as Maria said earlier, Fox News acts akin to a state propaganda network. It's not advocacy on behalf of a partisan president they get behind. It's willful deceit of the people. And maybe I'm different, but just forgive me if I don't fall to my knees in rapturous praise of Shepard Smith or Chris Wallace if they happen to have a moment or two of conscience when they speak the truth about what's happening. I think if they really felt as strongly as they do, they should resign.
It's an interesting point, because Shep Smith is seen as sort of the outlier at Fox News, Gabriel, where he is the one guy who seems to be willing, and he's managed to survive there doing it for that long. But to Fernand's point, is that something he should be applauded for, or is he somebody that's willing to exist in that environment despite the fact that he himself is trying to be honest?
Well, really, that's a question for his conscience. I mean, I think the larger point is, what is the mission of Fox News? And we saw this is not a new thing. We saw this during the Bush administration when Fox was sort of state TV. And when the Iraq war was going really badly, Roger Ailes, then the CEO of Fox News, told Fox producers, don't show segments about Iraq. Actively don't show the news because it is not helpful to their side. And I think this is what the difference between Fox News and journalism is. The news for them is, does it help my side or the other? And in their philosophy, it only should help the Donald Trump side.
So now you have questions of ratings? Because I thought you were going to say it doesn't help the ratings, but you're saying it didn't help our side.
Politically, yes. Yeah. Well, actually, in a certain sense, they were related, because Republicans did not want to watch. The ratings were going down because the Iraq war was going down. Right. So it was interconnected, but primarily it was this narrative does not help Republicans or George Bush.
And also their ratings are very stable, because there's been a lot of Pew Research studies that show that Republicans of a certain bent of conservatism only get their news from Fox and Breitbart, etc. I want to go to you on this, John Ralston, because one of the things you're also seeing is that this is being used. Fox News is often used as a lever against members of Congress who are vulnerable on issues like healthcare and who are pushed into supporting Donald Trump because they fear that the base will rise up against them. Fox has done a few things interesting this week. They've had a letter from Vice President Mike Pence that was published on the Fox website, and that was just this morning, titled Vice President Mike Pence, Donald Trump's triumphs are many after only 6 months, and he's just getting started. So this whole sort of encomium about the first 6 months of the administration, he's fought every day to deliver on his promises to the American people. At an historic pace, the president has taken bold action, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, keep Americans safe and secure. And then here is Anthony Scaramucci in one of in which he is performing this adoration of Donald Trump. And keep in mind as you're watching this that he used to be a big-time Trump critic.
I think he's got some of the best political instincts in the world, and perhaps in history. When you think about it, what I have found when I travel around the country, people love him. The president has really good karma, okay? He's genuinely a wonderful human being, but I love the president, and I'm very, very loyal to the president. Here's what I will tell you, okay? I love the president.
John, you've been reporting it brilliantly about the Dean Heller situation, the conundrum, this vulnerable guy who, on the one hand, his governor opposes the idea of taking Medicaid away from people, but on the other hand, his, constituents that are watching Fox News are hearing that kind of adoration. Does a member of Congress dare oppose the president if they are Republican, and that is what's on Fox News?
Well, I separate Sean Hannity from almost everything else on Fox News. That clip you just played of Scaramucci, Joy, that could have been Sean Hannity talking in private. Scaramucci will never take Sean Hannity's place as the primary spokesman for Donald Trump. And Sean Hannity seems to have some kind of internal personality crisis. I'm not a journalist, he said once. And he said, I'm an advocacy journalist. He's not an advocacy journalist. Advocacy journalism is crusading for something like like better treatment of the mentally ill or something like that. Sean Hannity sees his job as to defend the president at all costs and to be, as someone else and many others have said, as a propagandist. And it is as if that George Costanza is giving the orders inside the White House. Remember, Mr. President, it's not a lie if you believe it.
Yeah, and it's not just Fox News. And Gabe, I want to open with you on this.
Yeah.
Sinclair Broadcasting is much bigger than Fox News. This is an organization that bought Tribune Media Group for $3.9 billion in May. It gives the company ownership of enough local TV stations to reach 70% of American households. I want to play for our audience a little clip of what they are forcing their stations to air, and they've now upped the number of these they want aired on these stations every week. It is Boris Epshteyn, who viewers of this show will remember was the very propagandistic Donald Trump surrogate during the campaign, very bombastic guy, who now is working for Sinclair, delivering this kind of thing, not on cable, guys. This is broadcast local TV. Take a look.
It is important to note that voter fraud goes beyond stealing or miscounting ballots. Intentionally improper voter registration is absolutely a type of voter fraud. The Commission on Election Integrity has gotten to work. The President's Commission has been established to come up with a factual, impartial answer to that question. The state should do everything within their power to cooperate with the Commission. And that's the bottom line.
This is almost Pravda-esque, and this is now going out to potentially 70% of the broadcast viewing audience watching the news.
Yes, and we've been talking about Sean Hannity this morning. My sources are in and around Fox say that him and Bill O'Reilly are potentially in talks to take their shows to Sinclair. Bill O'Reilly's wanted to get back into the game. So Sinclair really wants to build the future of a conservative media empire, and poaching Fox's biggest names would help them do that. They already have Boris. But this, again, is the groundwork for what I think will be the next conservative media platform in the post-Roger Ailes era.
John Ralston, your thoughts?
Well, I have to tell you, Joy, Sinclair actually has a presence now in Nevada. Sinclair bought the NBC affiliate here in Las Vegas that I used to work for, and I looked at my producer. I had a program there when that happened, and I said, we are not long for... And then a month later, they canceled the program, not because I'm not a conservative, but because they only want to present one point of view, and it's happening to the station here, and it's happening everywhere. And listen, it's a very effective, I think, and in some ways a very, very scary tool.
Yeah, and Fernand, you have worked in a system in the radio world that was mostly right wing and that had a bent. I mean, does it concern you that we may be going to a situation where even NBC affiliates in local broadcast markets are owned by a clearly conservative network that wants a state sort of almost propagandistic point of view aired?
Joey, it's beyond concerned. At the risk of sounding alarmist, I am the son of Cuban exiles who lost their country to an authoritarian, totalitarian dictator who one of his first acts was to slowly but surely, methodically take control of the Cuban free media and make it state media. The same phenomenon took place a generation later in Venezuela, where today, Venezuela, which is one of the freest societies of Latin America, is run by a dictator in Maduro, who one of the first things he did was take control of the free media and make it state media. The fact that it is happening, and let me be clear, it is happening in the United States. Joy, this is post-coup behavior. This is amongst the most terrifying things I've seen in my lifetime, and I worry for my country and my...
One thing for it to be happening in cable, right? Cable is cable. Broadcast? That is a different thing.
So actually, it's really interesting that Ferdinand brought up authoritarianism, because Latino USA this week is doing a whole show about authoritarianism, looking at what happened in Argentina, the seeds we may be seeing in Venezuela, and what happens when you have a democracy where people vote essentially for authoritarianism, which is fear of the other and a strong man to basically come and take care of it. But the thing about Fox News that is eventually going to happen, because the data shows that no matter what they do, our country is becoming more black and brown and gay and etc. It's going to happen, and those Fox News viewers, that they're hearing all of this stuff, which is, I've heard people say now, racist, that they are going to see this, and at some point they're going to say, but wait a second, but my daughter just married a Mexican. Oh, my out with a black gay guy. Oh,
Right.
It's going to come and smack them in their faces because that is what the data shows where our country is going.
Yeah.
It's going to take a long time, though.
We didn't even get to Alex Jones calling for civil war against anyone who opposes Donald Trump. That is how much there is. We didn't even get to that. We'll have to save that for another show. Scary.